in California. I'm in Louisiana. It's okay. It's okay. It's called Little LA. You may not remember one thing I say, but I bet you every one of you remember this jacket I got on. There's not a whole lot that I can say after listening to all the great speakers you had up here and all the advice you had up here. So I'm going to cover something in general. I don't have much of an education. I've got to tell you a little story, because you got to learn how to tell stories or you can't work this business. Good storytellers make a lot of money in this business. My education is pretty weak. School was pretty hard on me. I went to the first grade, second grade, third grade. I had a hard time with that third grade. I didn't study. I did not study. I mean, I did that twice. So the next year I was ahead of those other people. So when I got into sports, I was a pretty decent basketball player. I got 2 scholarships. Went to Louisiana Tech. Now, if you know Louisiana Tech, it's a scholastical school. Me going to scholastic school wasn't going to work. I got a great education, and I did get an education there. What that education was, my professor was driving a Volkswagen and earning $12,000 a year. I left the next day. So that was my education in college. That is a true story. I was shocked, because I had big dreams. I learned how to dream big. My dream was travel all over the world, and I'm an avid hunter, and if there's animal activists in here, I would have had a camera. But travel all over the world hunting, and I didn't know how I was going to do that. Somebody introduced me to a program called Network Marketing. I've never heard it before. Thank God, every day. Every day. And I went to a meeting in Dallas, Texas. Sat in a room with about 15 or 20 people, and a guy walked across the stage and made one statement, his own statement I remember he made. I couldn't tell you anything else he said. He said, if you'll go out and do what you have to do for the next 3 to 4 years, you can do what you want to do the rest of your life. Hey, listen, out of those 15 people, I was one of the guys that was young and dumb and didn't know it wouldn't work. And went out and did what they said, and in 3 years, I retired, and I went on my hunting trip, and I have been all over the world hunting, and I got paid the time I was gone, called residual income. Now, in 37 years ago this happened. The technology that they got today that Melissa got up here, it's almost like it makes me mad. Really upset me. She's talking about 5 minutes. I can't even turn my computer on in 5 minutes. So I'm old school, and I still got to do it the old way. But let me just tell you some things that I learned. I love proof. How many of you heard of Richard Branson, Robert Kiyosaki, Donald Trump, and Warren Buffett? Have you heard of those? What do those 4 guys have in common? Money. They're all billionaires. B with the B. But that didn't get my attention as much as the other thing that they had in common. They're all in network marketing. But you know what really makes my heart warm? I found out before they did. And they're a whole lot smarter than I am. I don't have no education. They just recently, in the last few years, got network marketing. That's how it's a glamorous field today. It's a field where you can go out, you can take anybody. I love to take a young person. I heard these young people up here a while ago. That warms my heart, because they were like me. They're young and dumb and don't know how it will work, so they just go out and get by. Because they believe what they're hearing up here. And one of my great stories that's gone all over network marketing has been in Success Magazine. It's been in about every magazine that published this kind of industry. I started a bunch of kids in Lafayette, Louisiana. Probably the one and only time that's ever happened. In the first year, I had 20 of them. The oldest one was 22 on a 6-figure income. Let me say that again. The first year, them 22, there was 20 of them that earned a six-figure income. Sounds impossible, doesn't it? Their parents weren't earning that kind of money. They did everything in the world to keep them from getting involved in this, one of those scams, one of this, one of this, one of this, one of that. Their parents ended up in business because the kids were making more than they were. It's being at the right spot. Guys, I can't tell you how important it is to be where we are at this time. Yeah. Timing creates wealth. Right. Timing creates wealth. Yeah. If you're at the right spot at the right time, you can tell a lot of stories, you can make it in this business. But you got a young couple right here on the front row that saw this many years ago, and they were, I hate to say it, I hate to call the owners young and dumb, but they... I really do, I apologize for that, but I tell you what, I don't know how to say this nice, but their dad didn't see it, but he sent them down. And the story was told, I tell it over and over, guy earned X amount of dollars, and Amy saw it and she dropped her fingernail file. So I tell that story wherever I go. And she said, if I could earn $45,000 a year, what would be rich? He said, honey, that's $45,000 a month. That's $45,000 a month. I told some people earlier today, my grandmother told me this a long time ago. Some of you have got flowers and bushes and trees and farm and all that stuff. When's the best time to plant a tree? In the fall? No, 20 years ago.
20 years ago. How did you want me to talking to?
Hey, you are given that opportunity right here. You can't go back 20 years and plant a tree, and you can't go back and get one of them companies that's been 20 years ago.
That's right.
But you can go back to a company that's been here 12 years and start at the beginning, basically. It's only 6 months old here.
I like that.
They've got a track record. They've got millionaires. They got a comp plan that's producing millionaires. So we know that works. The only thing we got or the thing that we got that's so powerful is we kind of one of a kind with the product line we have.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we're in that perfect spot. That says, what time am I supposed to give up on? I love to be a little bit humorous, guys. I got to make up for it. I dress like this. I tell jokes. I need all the help I can get. I want to tell you a story. Now, some of you from Louisiana, you know, that's kind of country a little bit, you know. Some of you from New York, you may not catch this one. But let me tell you. Let me tell you something related to the brand new people that's here tonight.
Yeah.
Today. There was this cow.
I love it.
The cow was out in this big old clover that high. And there was a bee minding his own business, buzzing around and lit on this clover. And just about the time he lit on that clover, this cow took a big old chunk of that clover and swallowed it. The bee was on it, and he swallowed the bee. And that bee was so upset, he was flying all over this cow's stomach. He said, I'm going to teach this heifer that she'll never... teach this heifer that she will never swallow another bee. I'm going to sting her on the gizzard, I'm going to sting her on the liver, on the heart, on the kidneys. I'm going to sting her everywhere I can. He said, let me think where I'm going to sting her first. So he sat back and put his hand behind his head and he fell asleep. And when he woke up, the cow was gone. night, he stone-faced, didn't understand it. We were rooming together. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I just heard him burst out laughing. He said, I got it. This is kind of for the new people here. Don't go to sleep on this and let it get by. You don't want to have to be thinking of it. Go back to dreaming. I'm a freedom freak because I've had my freedom all my life, thank God. The professor taught me a valuable lesson. I have traveled all over the world. I got paid while I was doing it, but nothing more. I think the gentleman, I forgot who he was, come up earlier, educated for 12 years, talked about what they promise you. What I've used for my last 37 years in the business is something that I learned when I first got involved. And it's some figures and some numbers that you shouldn't go to sleep at night until you got that on a piece of paper you can share it, because it's changed a lot of people's mind. You know, awareness is an amazing thing. If you're not aware of something, then you're vulnerable. If you're going down this highway and it's got a big hole in it down there and nobody tells you you're wrong and get in trouble, but if I told you that that hole was there and you went down there anyway, shame on you. And so that's what I do. I take these numbers as documented by the Social Security Board, U.S. Department of Labor. I got those figures. And it tells and gives you the facts of life. I'm real. It's not no ifs, ands, and buts about it. And I'm going to tell you about that hole in the next 3 or 4 minutes. It looks like I got here. But that hole is this. Jot these numbers down. You got that? You know that pad they gave you when you came in here? You open it up. There's a book in there and a pen. You know what that's for? If he mentioned the age 65, everybody knows what 65 is. It just blows my mind. He's got these 18, 19-year-old kids knows what 65 means. They think it means you work till you're 65 and you retire. It's a lie. It's a lie. Education, I wish I had knowledge. I wish I had knowledge. I had an education. But I wouldn't trade what I live in my lifestyle to have an education and a job. I promise you that. So here are the numbers, folks. Age 65, here's what happens if you make it to 65. If you don't, you know what that is. 75% of the people in the richest country in the whole world are dependent on friends, relatives, Social Security, and charity. 75%. We worked all our life and got our butts kicked and told us when we could eat, when we could drink coffee, when we could go home, when we could get up, and you got that pass for the weekend. You do that all until you're 65 years old to fall in the 75% category. That's a sin is what that is. And 23% are still working because they have to maintain a lifestyle. They want you to retire on 60% of what you couldn't live on anyway. So 2% makes it in the richest country of the whole world. And in that 2%, let's consider Hollywood, let's consider the athletes. So how many do you think working stiffs fall into that? Very few. Very few. So that's that hole. Here is your answer. That's right. If you want to pay the price, if you're willing to pay the price for the next 3 to 4 years, I call it 2 to 3 years because of technology today. Back then, back in the day, there was no such thing as a cell phone or a computer or, barely automobiles. I'm going to close this right now. I see my time, 42 seconds. I want to close with this poem that I heard this 37 years ago, and it was powerful enough for me never to forget it. It's all about this poem. You write it down, jot it down, find out where it is, go see it, read it, you put it on and read it every day. It goes like this. It says, I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged that evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is a just employer. It gives you what you ask. But once you set the wages, you must borrow the tax. I worked for a menial hire, only to learn dismay that anything I'd asked of life, life would have willingly paid. You know when you recognize that? You recognize that when you are 65 and broke and wondering or depending on somebody, then you look back and if I would only done this. If I would have got with that group in D.C., if I'd have done this for the next 2 years, I'd have me a residual. Folks, residual income is one of the greatest things in the world. Amen. Thanks, Mel. Thanks, Emily.